Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill. Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are celebrating our 100th episode. 2 years of goodness that we've been working on bringing you all, and really excited to bring this episode here to celebrate the podcast milestone of 100 episodes and essentially a year. We've invited a longtime friend personally and also of our business, Ron Babich, to join in the conversation, and he will actually take over and have the responsibility of interviewing me for this episode. So Ron, with that in mind, I'm in the hot seat now. Why don't you take it over?
What a great honor. What a good friend. And it's been awesome knowing you all these years, Mike. So I'm super honored, just massively honored to be part of this. And super congratulations on hitting this 100th milestone. It's an awesome accomplishment. Terrific job.
Thanks, Ron. You were actually part of this, part of those first 100 episodes. So it's nice to reverse the role this time and let you interview me.
I love it. No, I absolutely love it. Awesome. Well, so much to ask of such such a big deal like today. But hey, with that in mind, I'm looking forward to talking about what Mike has learned over the last 100 episodes, what trends you've seen, and what has changed in the construction industry over the last couple of years. Mike, are you ready?
I think I'm ready to roll.
All right. Awesome. You know what? Something that's interesting that I did think is worth mentioning, that this is the 100th episode, but it's also in 100 years, sharing that same 100 mark with Reader's Digest. Time turned 100 this year. The BBC turned 100 this year. Stouffer's TV dinners turned 100 this year. The Jaguar car, and probably the most important thing and a good transition to start this thing off is the blender. So because you can't make a margarita without a blender. But anyways, so did you ever think that you would reach 100 episodes so quickly?
I did, only because when I start something, I see it through. I try and really finish it. So I knew we would keep getting here. This is an important mission for us to lead these conversations. So yeah, I figured we would get there and fly past it too.
How long yourself? How long have you been working now in this industry?
Oh, well, on the software side, we are in our 20th year. So we're almost celebrating our 20th birthday at About Time Technologies. And our WorkMax product, we're about 7 to 8 years into the development of our cloud solutions. So quite some time. And then also a decade before that, for about 10 years, I was a general contractor, and we specialized in self-performing and construction and concrete framing, carpentry, excavation, all those things. So 30 years overall in the construction space on either side of the fence between software and actually building buildings.
Awesome. So in that time, how has the construction market evolved since you started in 1992?
Wow, it's so different. Yet it's the same. So pretty interesting. Obviously, the biggest thing is the innovation. Just technology just is gaining velocity at a record pace always. Mobile solutions, I mean, that's the largest single thing that I can think of. Without that, I just don't think we would have arrived at some of these other things so quickly, like BIM and AI of all sorts. There's just so many different things that are now a part of the conversation and an important thing in safety and also building efficiently. So I just it's amazing to see what's all happened and changed in such a short period of time.
That's awesome. So many stories in 100 episodes. Do you see common patterns within those stories across all those interviews?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, one of the takeaways that I'm still a little surprised is, as an industry, we're still a bit behind. In a lot of ways, there are companies that are super innovative. I mean, that have like programmers on the staff and they're all in the cloud and they have all these solutions in place. They have a lot of automation. they're using robotic dogs to do things for safety reasons. Maybe they're having, equipment, heavy equipment by Caterpillar and other things that are using GPS and other things to help really perfectly grade something on the right curve and things like that. But then at the same time, even some of those same organizations are still documenting things with paper. They're still using spreadsheets, or maybe even worse than just that is you've got 7 or 8 different workflows and solutions that people are using to do the same thing throughout their enterprise. So I would say that's something that's surprising to me with all of the technological goodness and with all of the power of the cloud, that there are a lot of companies, probably, I would say maybe even just barely the majority, that are still not leveraging and taking advantage of those tools.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Uh, if you were a smart driven construction company about to start your next project, what advice would you give? And really also, what advice would you ignore on the innovation side?
On the proactive side, that I would really, truly, if I went back, if I left this business and went back to be a builder, general contractor, the first thing I would do is I would absolutely mandate that we are always innovating and leveraging these technology tools. And one rule of thumb that I've heard, and we've had some interviews with different companies and feedback from them, is that I would take on one big innovation project a year at least. And that way every year you're getting better. And I think just that constant, even the culture of change and innovation and embracing technology, I think that's the biggest thing that's missing from a lot of companies out there. The fear of change, listening maybe to field personnel, or maybe some of the older generation that are still in the workforce that are didn't grow up with technology. These things might be more scary to them than maybe somebody else that grew up with it. And so I would say I would recommend to anybody, and this is what I would do myself, I would absolutely innovate and continually be iterating on those innovations as I went through my business history. As far as advice that I would recommend people not take, same thing. I would say don't be scared. Do not be afraid of innovation. I would say do not be afraid of change. The old mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it is it's just a horrible thing for becoming better and growing and really staying on the leading edge of your competition, because that's what I'm seeing out there. Some of these new businesses that are only in business for 2 or 3 or 4 years that I see adopting technology. I mean, they are very advanced. They're very efficient. They know their numbers. They know their money. They're running these construction projects like a business owner that happens to be in construction, not like a contractor that's trying to figure out how to run a business.
There had to be some surprises along the way with over 100 stories. What would be maybe one of the biggest surprises that you took away that you weren't expecting?
I would say, I mean, kind of in the same line of what we were just talking about. I am surprised that technology isn't adopted a little more rapidly. That's the first thing. The second thing, and it doesn't matter if I'm talking to somebody in oil and gas or energy or solar or construction, heavy highway, civil work, capital projects, all of these types of things, it seems like there's still this common thread where we have technology tools, we have integration tools, we have all these methods to put information in the cloud and collaborate with that efficiently. And I just feel like there's still a lot of data silos. And so it's surprising to me, number one, that technology providers like us and others in our space aren't doing a better job of collaborating with other best of breed point solutions so that a customer can have one really nice experience with an integrated solution, talking to ERP and estimating and maybe CRM. But most of all, and most critically, back to the point at the top of the discussion here, I think having that live real time pulse of your data is critical. So I would start there. And I'm surprised every time when companies are saying, "Oh yeah, we're still on paper, we're still doing it with spreadsheets." We really, we're kind of old school.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. We all have wins, losses, and failures that we learn from. If you were to pick a failure or an apparent failure, is there one that you think about that maybe sets you up later for success? You've got a favorite failure of your own?
Well, I don't know if I would call it a favorite because you never like to be wrong or miss the mark, even slightly. But I would definitely say one of our non-bullseyes, so to speak, is when we were pivoting from our enterprise solution called About Time Enterprise, our server-based software, and migrating to the cloud and Amazon Web Services. We did a complete ground-up rewrite, and so what we did is we started down the process of innovating this entire platform. So I think our eyes were a lot bigger than our stomach on what type of an undertaking that would be and how long it was going to take. Something that we thought would take less than a year took several years. And at a point, we finally felt like, okay, the time solution that we are known for in our About Time Enterprise app is very complex. It's all new in the cloud. Everything's been rewritten and redone and improved upon from what we'd learned in our previous 10 or 15 years in business. And we felt like, well, our forms module is already ready to go, and time's still not quite where we want it before we want to start migrating customers to it that we have already. And so let's just release forms into the market first. So we did that for about a year. And that was kind of a tough transition for our sales team, for our support team, for our company, just everything about who our identity was known as in the industry. So when we decided to release this whole platform of solutions, this what we call the complete suite, we had time, forms, assets, which is tools and equipment tracking, heavy equipment. And then we also had a service module that we later pivoted and said, well, we don't want to do a full-blown service module yet. We got to work towards that. So we'll just do service scheduling and dispatch. So scheduling and dispatching. And then we had an insight module that was a large BI layer over the top of all of it to show those results in dashboarding and really intelligence of quantities and production and man hours and units to complete and all these other things. And it was just a huge undertaking that was not only everything we'd always had, but it was better and more, and it was in the cloud. And so I think just focusing on our core competency first and land and then expand would have been a lot better approach than the one that we took. And I think we would have probably at least been quicker to market in order to serve the customers that we already had and also the ones that we wanted to get to.
That's great. Just flipping it a little bit on that note, and we think about construction as and it's unfortunate that the way it is, but agriculture and construction are always on the bottom of the list when it comes to technology. So, in thinking about that and lessons learned, what takeaway, what's something that you learned that would benefit any new customers coming on who want to get a better handle on construction management, whether it's how it's implemented, how it's designed. Is there something you learned over time that you would make a recommendation for any construction company who's looking to go from paper to electronic to make that big step?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and it's funny in construction. I mean, we use a blueprint. We have a plan. There's always a plan, and the plan has everything already figured out before anybody moves any dirt, before anybody orders any materials. The plan is complete. So I would say have a scaled plan of how you want to roll that solution out. Who does it impact, and maybe even though it impacts everybody in the enterprise, pick the right project, pick the right team, pick the right champions, and make sure that you at least have some of those things in place. Now, don't do it at the expense of delay that I've seen happen for some companies over a decade. We have companies that come and see us every year and they say, this is the year, and it hasn't been the year yet. And so, meanwhile, there's other companies that are competing with them, or maybe that they co-op and do projects together on that have adopted our technology and they're enjoying it, and they've kind of swallowed that pill and gotten past the hard part by just deciding, what, we just need to bite the bullet and get this in place because these papers and spreadsheets are just killing us. So That's what I think.
Turning towards you for a second, on social media and on social media channels, you do such a great job of just personal motivation and the accomplishments that you achieve all of the time. So, question for you specifically for you is in this last year, is there a new belief or behavior or habit that's most improved your life with all the like the big things that you're doing all the time?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I appreciate that. I think, which thank you again for the kudos as well. Much appreciated. I would say, it's a book that I recently read and actually just got the audio book. I'm going to go back through and listen to it and mark out and make notes in the columns and whatnot in a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it is just such an incredible read. I highly recommend it. In fact, my wife's reading it again for the second time. Last night, she says, "Hey, can you get that audio book? I want to listen to it again now that I've already read it." And so we're, even in my personal life and in business, Atomic Habits is basically about breaking down to very small. The basis is the atom. That's what atomic. The root word of atomic is the atom. It's the smallest form of anything that you can start with. So it's just about improving yourself incrementally, just even by very small margin. So I think in business, I think in the software business, I think with customers, I just want to leave things just 1% better every time I touch them. Anytime I deal with something, if I can improve it before I leave it where it was, then I think that just creates momentum, and you get to a point where if you're involved in it, you're going to win. It's going to get better. It's going to improve, and I think people are attracted to those things, and they want to be a part of something that's growing and exciting and improving, and I think that's just a great principle to abide by in our personal lives as well as in business.
No, I love it. You know what I love about it too is you mean it and you bring such sincerity and inspiration to it all. It's awesome to watch. Inside outside of PewDiePie, probably the number one influencer that maybe
Oh,
yeah, and who knows, and from a millions perspective. So no, kudos, Mike, on all that. And I have Atomic Habits sitting right over to my left here. That is it's an awesome book. That's a great reference. So, Mike, outside of running maybe 100 miles uphill every day that you do, which is amazing, what's another unusual habit or an absurd thing that you absolutely love?
oh boy, absurd. Well, I'm really into archery. I like bow hunting and the outdoors and hiking and just being outdoors. I feel like I'm at home in the mountains. And so I don't know that it's absurd for sure, but it is unique from, some people maybe live in a city and don't get a chance to get away as often as I do. I live in a beautiful mountain valley just on the bench. And so I'm close to mountains all the time. So that's something I really enjoy.
That's great. If you could put, if you could just put one thing on a bumper sticker that everybody would see all the time in everybody's car, what would be on that bumper sticker?
Uh, Honestly, be better.
Awesome. That's great. What's next in the market? What's next for the business? What do you think the next big thing is? What's the next big change?
For the business at WorkMax and About Time Technologies, one of the things that we've noticed, this really actually plays way back into the conversation earlier about coming out with this huge platform and all these different modules and trying to really eat the elephant, in one bite, so to speak. But as we've done that, I think we've gone past maybe where we needed to go with some of this stuff in a way that I would say, like our forms module, it's a fantastic tool for safety, for compliance, change orders, work orders, all of these look aheads, all these things that companies are struggling with, and we can help them today with what we already have, but our messaging and our marketing hasn't really bundled it properly so that they're really seeing that. We've had, in fact, a recent episode that we had Melissa Castle with Executive Elevators, one of our customers, talking about the way that they're using and innovating their processes with our forms tool. And even though we're known for time and labor collection and production and those things, The forms tool that they use for all of their different daily activities of all their service technicians are. I mean, she basically said we can't live without them. Like we couldn't even run our business if we didn't have these now. And so they've only been a customer for a couple of years, and they've been in business for 40 years. So for 38 years, they were struggling and doing things a very inefficient way. And even though they looked for a solution to track time and labor for payroll, they ended up getting so much more. And so, as a business, we're focusing a lot more on those parts of companies' challenges that we can solve today by just telling a better story and painting a better picture of what the power of these solutions that we already have are for those other areas. So not just generic forms, so to speak. It's so much more.
Yeah, do you think it's easier now that in the last it seems like last 3 5 years, the mentality of, "Hey, big hands, gloves, just we're not gonna be able to do things in the field now," to it would seems like an overabundance of applications now that with along with millennials now being such a big part of the workforce with construction, do you see that change in the last couple of years that that's getting easier to deal with to try to, implement all those ancillary things on top of an existing platform?
Yeah, no question. And even like I mentioned earlier, where we kind of have data bloat on one hand while we're also lacking on the other. There are so many apps and so many one-off solutions that solve a little, like expense management, and it's just this little piece, this little thing. And although it's fantastic and much needed and very powerful, an important part of running a daily business, and way better than paper or a spreadsheet, but at the same time, if you could solve that challenge with another app that does 8 or 10 other things, and then it all integrates with your ERP, and it's pulling budgets and data from your estimating system, and you're using Power BI or other tools to manage the data at a higher level, you could be so much more efficient with one single source of truth, one process of collecting and managing that data. And so I would say, yeah, the apps are abundant. People are used to it. They use them personally. They use them, at night at home with their family, their kids. Everybody's on their devices, and so I think that part, the heavy lifting is over, and people have embraced those for the most part. And so I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, I think companies should look for something that can solve more things than just one or two at once.
Yeah, there's a practical side to all this too. I think there's an evolution that happens when you evolve in technology like we have, and there's staples like the estimate and the schedule that are kind of like the bottom of the bun. We always have an estimate, we always have a schedule. Then on top of that, there are things that are there along with it, and time is one of those things, right? As well as the quantities and the progress that we do in that. Do you see that with time and quantities being an anchor, how that kind of it helps people in the process, lay things on top of it, make better decisions, so you don't have to have 1,000 applications, leveraging less applications, but getting the information that you need, but tying those things to the estimate, the schedule, time, and quantities.
Yeah, I do, and I love that you use the word anchor because it really is. Companies that leverage our platform often say, "Wow, I bought it for this, but there's so much more, and I didn't even realize, when I added this and added that. Now, when I'm punching in, I can have this form get triggered for safety, and then when I'm picking this equipment, I have an inspection report that's necessary. I got to do a mandatory walk around." And so there's things we could do to automatically launch and present those things in a workflow so that people actually have to do 6 or 8 steps that are required. And maybe today, without the solution, they're doing them out of order. If they do them at all, then they're doing them in different, maybe one's in a Google sheet, the other one's, in a spreadsheet in Excel, another one's in the estimating application. Then there's an export, then there's an import, then they got a pivot table. I mean, you just go through this whole thing, and it's like, man, if you could just get this data at the source, at the root, and then share that where it needs to go throughout your enterprise, and update everybody at the same time, you've got, really, it is the whole, it's like the I don't know, the triple Big Mac. I mean, it's got everything. It's got all the meat, all the cheese, all the bread, all the fixins. Uh, but it starts at the bottom with that bun of having that anchor data that really feeds into everything else, which is really production. Like, how productive are we? How many widgets, how many units are we completing in what amount of time? And are we ahead or behind schedule based on that? And that's everything. I mean, other the materials, it's going to require what it requires from a material perspective with a fraction of a margin of potential waste. But for the most part, the largest variable expense is that labor. So you got to start there, and then you can expand and improve everywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mike. In it is that, isn't it? It's the comparison to manufacturing and construction, where in manufacturing there's predictability and there's a plant and there's an assembly line. Where in construction there's this disparate manufacturing element that takes place all over the place. And you could see how it's, especially in the last couple of years, from a WorkMax perspective, WorkMax taking that first mile, if you will, that first 2 inches where the data is actually collected, of making a substantial difference. Do you have any examples, or can you think of anything where, hey, the bridge was connected that didn't exist before when WorkMax came in and supplied kind of that first level information from the that didn't exist before but now does?
Yeah, we see it all the time. I can think of a local customer here, pretty large organization. They're probably in the $100 million a year range, and um, they got our platform for one thing, for the time and labor, and started to learn, oh wow, we can replace this and that forms tool and this tool tracking app, and oh, it can integrate with our ERP, so we can get rid of this spreadsheet. And they basically replace 6 or 7 processes with one application. And so even if, let's say, somebody didn't love one piece or another, or wish that it was this way or that, well, they would have they would basically be in a fist fight to try and get that solution out, WorkMax displaced, because other people are counting on it for so many other things that it's just really a part of. It's kind of like the heart. It's got different valves that go to different other solutions, but just because one of the valves is, well, you got to go in and make some adjustments there, right? Maybe get a surgery and put a stent in to fix that clogged process, so to speak. So I think that's an example of one company that really got a lot more than they really bargained for, and quite frankly, they saved a pile of money in doing it because they were able to just choose one application.
That's great. So material costs are up right now. Labor costs are up, obviously, as well. Labor shortages are in place. You mentioned productivity. How does productivity play into helping solve even a little bit of the labor issue and helping address workforce management issues?
Well, and I've had this experience in my own business. There's some projects you've got 20% excessive labor force in one project while you're 20% down in another. So having that visibility of where to spread your resources, and to know by looking ahead and say, based on current trend on the budget, because we're tracking these productivity metrics and the hours it's requiring, I can tell 2 months in advance where we're going to hit. Like, we're going to overshoot the moon. It's like the Apollo 13 thing where they're looking through this little thing to try, and that's almost like a lot of construction companies today. I mean, they're literally operating with that Apollo 13 mentality where it's like one in a million that they even can make this work and survive this project, so to speak. And yet we've got tools that can link all of these processes together, share that visibility, give them that insight, that intelligence that they need to say, in 9 days we're supposed to be done with this project, but at current trend it's going to take 14. So number one, we're pulling double shifts. We're working weekends. I mean, whatever we have to do, because maybe I'm going to get, fined for being over schedule or behind, right? Maybe I'm going to get bonuses for finishing early. And we've had many customers get a lot of extra money and bonuses because they've completed ahead of schedule, and they knew they were going to, because they had a tool that was measuring that as they went, and not the rearview mirror management that you have to do when you don't have these tools.
The elephant in the room oftentimes is, or I think every time probably, is change management, not technology. in with these things. So, what advice would you give in terms of a place to start when it comes to change management and walking and then running to implement tools like Workbanks?
I think the biggest thing, kind of like I was saying earlier, when you pick the a good project that makes more sense than maybe another one. We had one customer years ago. They said, "Hey, we want to pilot this thing, and we're gonna beat on it, and we're gonna kick it, and we're gonna grab a sledgehammer and smash it." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Why would you do that?" And they're saying, "Well, because we figure if we could really pound on this thing through a pilot." And do everything we could think of to sabotage it. And then if it works still, then we think we can get it in our guys' hands. And so, we found out, oh, we were deleting this data, we were going in and editing this and changing that, and then trying to sync it. And they were just manipulating everything to try and see what things they could uncover that could potentially happen. And it's like, at the end of the day, the company never really implemented anything. And yet they had other companies that were kind of friends in the industry, or maybe frenemies, competitors, that adopted our solution and they were all the way to the moon before these guys ever even got off the ground. And so I think just having a proper approach to this, where you are proactively saying, look, we want to be better. And so as a company, in order for us to not only survive, but really thrive in the industry and to achieve our goals, I mean, everybody wants to win. Your employees, they want to do well. Everybody out in the field, they want to do a good job. Nobody's out there trying to, slack and do a bad job and do poor work and skim by. I mean, people land there at times, but that's really not most people's heart. Okay, so we need to give them a place where they can feel like they need to stretch themselves just a little bit. And so, as a company, if you can create a culture of innovation and where you adopt change and you even embrace it, and it's kind of like we were talking about with some of the different solutions out there that might replace two or three or four processes that companies already are dealing with manually. Your field wants this stuff. They want it to be easier. They want it to be better. And also they want to be rewarded and recognized when they do a great job. But if you don't have these tools in place, the only thing you're doing is waiting for the end of the month or the end of the project to say, well, how'd we do? Oh, it looks like we didn't do as well as we hoped. Sorry guys, there's no bonus. Whereas if like, in a basketball game or something where you have the time clock ticking down, 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 it's crunch time. You got to dig deep. You got to do extra. You can't miss that tackle. You got to, perform at a higher level, and you'll have an opportunity to actually come out victorious and feel like you won. You did a great job and we're successful. And I think if we can play on that part of people that they want to really thrive and be better and feel good about themselves and their effort, then as a company, we could tap into those things and actually leverage them and elevate the harbor for all the ships on your team.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That brings up the topic of people. You talked about technology, talked about processes. It seems like there's a recent change, again, last 3 to 5 years with new tools that bring about a lot of good positive things with observations and inspections and digital things that you can do, reward systems around now in the field and construction that have changed, and opportunities that have risen up that allow us to consolidate roles, if you will. So whether you're a super large $5 billion contractor or a 100 million, 50 million, or $50,000 contractor, the technology has enabled the consolidation of potentially of roles in the field, so that our supervisors can do more, our safety inspectors can do more. Do you see? Do you see, or have you heard stories of a change in terms of roles out in the field and being able to kind of leverage technology to get more done from a people perspective and to make it easier for them?
Yeah, most certainly, and similar to the executive elevator example, I've talked to many customers and companies that aren't customers yet that have said, if we can put a great tool in place that gives people an opportunity to communicate better, we don't have to send a foreman or a superintendent out to check every job site every day in traffic, wasting expensive fuel that's $5 or $6 a gallon in some places, racking up overtime. They're in traffic. that none of us like to be doing that. We don't want to deal with that. It doesn't make us feel better or productive, right? So these tools can eliminate that need for that waste of resources and time and energy and bandwidth and even emotional strength, right? And fortitude. And so if you put something in place that helps your staff, your teams, the guys in the field, the boots on the ground, they're already working their heinies off, you're going to be a better steward of their personal happiness and fulfillment, not just your bottom line, not just the savings on fuel and excessive overtime, but they can make it to the soccer game because they're not stuck in traffic, right? They can worry about work while they're working, and then they can get home to their family or to their vacation or to things that they want to do to have a higher quality of life. And I think that's an area that historically in the industry, and I grew up in it. I mean, I never, I mean, I don't even, I'm trying to think here. I don't know that I ever had in fact, I didn't have a paid holiday, not on the calendar for any of the construction companies that I worked for. If you weren't on the clock working, I never got paid. And so, you know, yeah, they'd give you a couple weeks off, but you're not getting paid for that time. And so that was, maybe a different time. I was working for smaller companies at that time, and I started my own very quickly. So I know there's other businesses and organizations that have that handled, but at the same time, I think just the awareness of personal care and interest in people's contentment and happiness and emotional well-being is something that we're finally starting to pay a little bit more attention to in construction. And I think that's along with the technology. I think having the people side of things like you mentioned, and then also the processes through solutions and technology and software can really help bring all that together to where we got a nucleus of something that we can really make some changes in the industry and not be affected by supply chains, because we can look ahead. We have tools that can help us know, I need to order that 2 weeks earlier than normal, or I think this is going to be a problem at this certain point, and I can get ahead of that now. Whereas, when you're doing it manually, it's like, man, hopefully everybody remembers everything, and I don't. So I don't know how those guys are able to do it with it without better tools.
Awesome. Thank you for all the great episodes that have happened, and thank you in advance for all the great episodes I'm sure that are going to come in the future that will help a lot of people understand what their peers are doing, which is just so valuable to every other organization on the planet to be a bird's eye view as to what's going on out there, and you're that channel that makes that happen. Is there, Mike? Is there anything else? And also, thank you for letting me guest host this episode. It's something I've dreamt about since I was 14. Is there anything else that you would want our listeners to grab onto?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful that we were able to help your wildest dreams come true. So that's good. um, but aside from that, I think just the takeaway, um, let's embrace change, not for the sake of change, but to be better. Let's allow ourselves to be open minded to maybe there's a better way than even though you think it's been working for 30 or 40 or 100 years because this is the way you've always done it. There's tools out there, folks, that can really help you to be better in so many different ways, and ultimately, like we just talked, help your teams feel more fulfilled, be more productive, feel like their time is being spent on worthwhile things, and taking manual, painful processes out of their hands and off of their plate, and giving them a tool that's built for the job instead of a hammer and a 50-pound box of ring shank nails. Let's give them a nail gun with a compressor and have something that can drive those quickly and efficiently, and isn't going to wear their arm out so that they go home sore at night. So that's the takeaway that I would say. I would also just like to definitely end by saying, thank you so much to the listeners and those of you who have been here loyally sharing and supporting the episodes. We've had tens of thousands of downloads and shares of the podcast, and we're thankful that we're able to help bring this to so many of you, and just hope that you continue to share the good word, and that we can continue to bring valued guests that will help you to not only improve your business but also your life.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.